What is going on, everyone? It is June 27th, 2025. Zooch, we are back from our break and we are going to get back to our regularly scheduled programming, or at least regular for now. We are going to be previewing the Southeastern Conference. I'm excited. This is going to start our kind of mini series preseason, as every 2 weeks we'll be previewing a new conference. But today, Zooch, we got the SEC, the big one, the one that stirs up all the controversy. I'm excited, and there's a lot to be excited about in this conference for this year.
Yeah, I mean, we know how it ended for them last year. No teams in the national championship. No, Georgia, Notre Dame that wasn't even a semifinal. They had no games no teams in the semifinal, or Texas. Sorry, Texas was in the semifinal. So, yeah, a down year. Wouldn't that be nice for every other conference in the Big Ten for a down year to be? You still add 3 teams in the playoffs or whatever. So.
It's funny, and what's interesting about this year is that, the one thing before we get into teams is, I think you kind of look at this through two eyes. And one of my eyes, I'm looking at it and I'm like, besides Texas, it's everyone seems to look a little bit down this year. But you can look at it through the other eye where it's just like, is everyone looking down, or are we underrating some teams? Are there a couple usually middling of the pack SEC teams that now, with the inference and the insertion of NIL money and kind of great coaching hires that they've had over the last 5 years, like they have become players and emergence of star players? It's it's going to be very, very intriguing, I think. And it's also going to be funny because there is just anytime you review conferences, but this conference specifically, I mean, I was talking to you and some buddies before the show. It's like you just go down the rabbit hole sometimes with this research, and it's hilarious. Like looking at
Oh
all the
yeah,
Ole Miss coaches from the last 2 decades, the funniest thing ever. Chad
it's
Morris getting hired at Arkansas after going like 14-20 at SMU. That's the funniest thing ever.
Arkansas had. It's either Arkansas or Ole Miss, I think, who have had the funniest. Like Arkansas is just.
Auburn's had some funny ones. Some
Auburn has had
good
some
but
funny
funny
ones, but
ones.
Arkansas is like. It's almost like they try to overcorrect a little bit too much with their coaches. Like you have Houston Nutt, and then you go like the stuff happens with him. Then you go to Bobby Petrino, and then randomly in there John L. Smith, which is just really funny. Then you have Brett Bielema at
Oh,
Chad Morris. It's
hey,
just a funny.
I'm a Bielema guy, so come on, I got to ride for my guy. But just like last year when we did this, we are just gonna go alphabetical order, so none of you fans get upset with this, because I just know how the SEC fans react if we're gonna start with Alabama because it's in alphabetical order, but they're gonna go, oh man, like you guys start with Alabama. Well, maybe even if you weren't going alphabetical, we start with Alabama. They've been the cream of the crop the last few years. Last few decades, I guess I should say. The last few years have kind of been a little bit disappointing to their standards. They got a win total set at 9.5 as of when per I pulled these numbers today. But Zuch, how are you feeling about the Crimson Tide this year? I feel uneasy, but I think I feel more good than bad with them. I think there's a lot to look to.
My thing with Alabama is since 2007, 2008, talent has never been like even this year. Talent is not going to be the issue, and it wasn't the issue last year. I guess you could say quarterback was an issue, but I don't think it was like it was mistakes and like ill-timed penalties and that sort of thing that was the issue for Alabama,
Yeah.
not talent as a whole. So I think what is going to matter for Alabama this year is can they correct that? Will they be more sophisticated and you won't have like the games like the Oklahoma game where there was 5 turnovers and they
Yeah.
just never got like I'm trying to think about Saban's whole career and like usually like there was never really a game. There was a couple, I guess I should say, like that Clemson national championship they got killed. I'm sure there's a couple others, But for Alabama last year, like, you got killed by Oklahoma. I mean, you can throw the bowl game in there against Michigan, which wasn't a good loss, but it's still what like, I don't think anybody, like, thinks that Michigan had more talent or Oklahoma had more
No, not at
talent or
all.
whatever than Alabama. It was a just they weren't a cohesive group, and they still went 9-4,
Yeah,
and we're in the thick of the I mean, they were gonna be a playoff team until they lost that Oklahoma game. You can argue about deserves, not deserves, whatever. It was a 12-team playoff. 10-2 Alabama is going to be in a 12-team playoff
yeah.
every year.
I mean,
So
you talk about sophistication. The two things I want to bring up is adding Ryan Grubb. So you add Ryan Grubb back to Kalen DeBoer. We know the season that he had with Michael Penix, and I think they got to get that QB position. They got to choose the right guy, whether it's Austin Mack, whether it's Ty Simpson, whether it's that freshman that they're bringing in. This is a team on the schedule. They're avoiding Texas. It's not to say it's going to be an easy schedule, not even the easiest in the SEC by a long shot, but you do avoid Texas. And if you can avoid Texas, that avoids a huge kind of potential game where they're probably not favored. Um, but I think Ryan Grubb is going to add more to Alabama than I think even Alabama fans recognize. And last thing I'm going to say, you do not want to anger Legend again this year. We do not want to be angering Legend again.
and we all know that part of the inconsistency had to do with how Kalen DeBoer dressed. If he has that
Yes.
under control, then they will win games.
No, yeah, I'm looking forward to Alabama 9.5. I think that's a very fair over
I
under
mean,
for
yeah,
them.
that's what it should and that's, like, where people will come in and say, "Oh, it's the Alabama bias," but, yeah, you get a little bit of bias when you've been as good as they have been for legitimately almost 20 It's not like "Oh," like and you'll see that sometimes with teams, right? Like, I'm not even saying it's gonna be them this year, but, like, Illinois won 10 games last year, right? They're gonna get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt coming into this year,
Yeah,
based really off of 1 year. Alabama is I mean, 2008 was the first year under Saban they went undefeated in the regular season, and I think they've had at least 9 wins every year since then
yeah.
in the best conference in football. Like, yeah, you deserve the benefit of the doubt.
I totally agree. Another guy who seems to be getting the benefit of the doubt. We're gonna move on to Arkansas, and in my notes I have, man, Sam Pittman is the cockroach of coaches, dude. Like he just stays alive, man. When the nuclear blasts go off, as it seems to have in Hogland right now. I know they're reeling after that. Would would you say that's probably the worst College World Series loss, at least I've seen live from
It
Hog
was
Nation?
there was one a few years ago, and I think it was Oregon State in it where they, like, had I don't remember the exact details, but for some reason in my mind, they had, like, 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth or whatever and, like, dropped a foul ball or something like that
Oh,
and ended up
I remember that
losing.
game. I didn't
It
watch
was
that
something
game
along
live,
those
though.
lines, but
I was
yeah, that was the
watching a game at a great bar down here in, Southern California, Urkel's. Good burgers, good beers, and I felt sick to my stomach. The ball bounced comically far away from that outfielder after it hit him in the head. But back to Arkansas, I don't I am not super high on Arkansas, and it's for 2 reasons. One, the d the defense and offense are gonna have to replace so much. I think Taylon Green is gonna be the only returning starter. I think Taylon Green is a good to very good player, maybe great player, but he's, to a team that already having turmoil, that they have to replace every single starter on offense. Another reason is that I see these historically kind of middle of the pack SEC schools. I mean, we'll get into it later with South Carolina, Ole Miss, even Mizzou to a degree. I mean, shoot, even Vanderbilt to a degree. They're all seeming to like make strides and be like, oh my gosh. Arkansas is just still saying Arkansas, even though they have all the opportunity that all these other teams have.
No, they're just in a I don't know with them because it's like every other school, like you said, with the exception of them and Mississippi State, but Mississippi State's in a little bit of a different situation. Their coach died out of nowhere, so that is that to me takes a little more than a year or two to like that's an out of nowhere type thing. It's not like you, I think someone like a school like Ole Miss or South Carolina or like you said, middle of the pack type teams kind of always have a contingency for, hey, our coach might leave if like this success or whatever continues. Arkansas, it almost seems like, and I never hear like, oh, their NIL collective is doing like really well on it. Like it almost seems to me, and I don't know that their fans would want to admit it, that they are way more of a basketball school than a football school, and I think they
The
want
last
to
couple of years,
be.
it's a close. I mean, you're right.
I think they want to be a football school, but I think they are more so like they have a great basketball program. Like I'm not saying like oh they're winning the national title and stuff like that, but their basketball program a lot of teams would be envious of. Is I
The
guess what I'm
Tyson
getting
Chicken
at.
guy. Thank you,
Yeah,
Tyson Chicken guy.
there is no one, even in the conference, who's like, oh man, like I wish, like, I'm sure there's schools out there who are like, oh, I wish we could really develop our NIL like Ole Miss has, or I wish we had the tradition that Alabama or LSU or Florida has. I wish we were in the hotbed of recruiting like Florida is. There's just nothing with Arkansas that you're like, they're really good at that. Like, they might not win the national title, but they develop players really, really well. They, you know, have like really good coaches that they just end up cycling through them because they're not like a preeminent institution or whatever. They're just middling.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what I'm going.
that's what I have. They're middling. Win total set at 5.5. That's like one that I toss up. I'm like, I mean, it can go either way. The last thing I'll ask you about Arkansas Zooch is, do you think there's a way that Sam Pittman isn't fired after this year? What does Sam Pittman need to do to not get fired? I guess the last question
I
I'll ask.
mean, you have to show a significant step, I think. And to me, a significant step isn't 6 or 7 wins. It's maybe 8, probably. Like if they went 9-3, and I don't have their schedule right in front of me, but 9-3, and you lose to Texas, LSU, and Alabama, then I'm like, okay, that's a significant step. Like you're going in the right direction. But if you're 6-6 and you win your 4 out of conference games or whatever, or 3 out of conference games, and your other 3 wins are Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Vandy, did you really improve? Like,
No, I
no.
agree.
So
Yeah, we'll see with Razorbacks. Woo, Piggy, come on. But unfortunately, I mean, Sam Pittman, he just stays around. Moving on to the next team in the state of Alabama. Some call them the little brother, but don't tell their Twitter fans that because, I'm not gonna lie, they have been on edge, and I would
the
say
Al Qaeda of the SEC. That's good.
yes, yes, they've been uncharacteristically quiet this offseason. Some other fan bases have been a bit louder that we'll get into. They've been very quiet. And I think that's because I think their B-holes finally went from this to this about Hugh Freeze. Because it's put up or shut up time for Auburn, man. I mean, win total set at 8, and finally Hugh Freeze seems to have his quarterback, or a quarterback he can actually work with, in Jackson Arnold. Better than that clown show that they had at quarterback last year. I mean, anyone with eyes could have seen that. I mean, Peyton Thorne, are we kidding me? Are we kidding ourselves? But you add Eric Singleton in the portal. Auburn ranked 28th last year in total defense in the country, and you get some guys in the talent, and they don't have the hardest schedule in the SEC. It really is put up or shut up time for Freeze.
Yeah, and I was like actually looking at Auburn's schedule, and I have it pulled up in front of me. They start at Baylor, which is not like that could be a pretty tough game, but so they have Baylor, Ball State, South Alabama, and then they go at Oklahoma, at A&M, Georgia, Missouri. Then it's at Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer, and then of course Alabama to end the season. I mean, it has a chance for them if this by October 11th. So roughly a month and a half or so into the season for the wheels to completely like if they
Come off.
lose
No, it's
three of those games, and that's and I mean, we'll see with Oklahoma. I think they're actually going to be pretty good, but
mhm.
Auburn's not going to be favored at A&M or against Georgia for sure.
I'll tell you what, that Jackson Arnold going to play Oklahoma again is going to be real, real fun, man.
We will be hearing it from Cody,
Resident
and
from
that
resident
is a
Sooner fan
must-watch game
Cody.
with
Yes,
Cody
that's a must watch.
to see
That
what
will
he
be
has to say about the situation. But, I mean and that's the issue with put up or like, a team being in a put up or shut up situation like Auburn is because you could theoretically, I think they could lose to Baylor, Oklahoma, A&M, Georgia, and I mean, that's 4 like, if they start out 2-4, like,
phew.
even if they started out 3-3, which is, honest to God, with that schedule, not, like, the worst case scenario, like, I mean, obviously, at Auburn, you want to be really good, but I would venture to say unless they have a huge jump up in what they've been, 4-2 is the best case scenario, like,
No, that is.
I don't know that you're gonna win at A&M or beat Georgia at home, and Baylor and Oak like, Baylor's gonna be a good team this year. Oklahoma, I think, is gonna be improved this year. So, yeah, that's the issue being in this conference is when you're in a put up or shut up situation, s 4 of your 6 games are against teams who probably are gonna have 8 or so wins.
Yeah, to me, that's the truth. And Hugh Freeze, hospital bed Freeze. He's got a shot this year, so we will see. Moving on to, I guess, a lesser put up or shut up team, Florida. Sunbelt Billy and the gang. They had a resurgence, to say the least, at the end of last year. And Zooch, they may have what is the most, I'm not going to say best, but they have the most intriguing player, I think, in the country on their team in DJ Lagway because
He's
he is their team. His success will directly correlate with Florida's success.
Also, it's extremely weird this year, and I didn't realize this until I was, like, doing some research. Florida doesn't play Tennessee until the week of, before Thanksgiving,
Yeah, a lot of the schedule stuff is weird.
which is
Like,
just I think when I was little, I remember one year the game got, like, pushed back because of a hurricane, but most of the time, that's like a late September type game, but like, they're kinda in the Auburn territory to me where I do think Billy Napier got the pressure off of him a little bit, but I almost wonder if that's a little bit of a fake out. Like we've seen this before, right? With coaches that you were dead in the water and you come out and Florida beat LSU, they beat Ole Miss. Uh the worst week of my life when they beat Ole Miss. That week just progressively it's it was truly not funny. My mom died like 2 days later, but that week just progressively got I just went from
come
Jackson
on,
Dart,
man.
like,
Come
crying on
on,
the field
man.
to like, "Oh, well, gonna go sit in my at my parents' house while my mom is on hospice. This is
Come
college football
on,
needs to end."
man.
But they what I'm saying is, I was like, it might be kind of fake, their whole and their schedule is hard too. I mean, every SEC team has a hard schedule. I don't care what anyone says, but they have LIU, obviously a win. South Florida might be a little bit improved this year, and then their next 4 games are at LSU,
Saw
at
this.
Miami, Texas, and at A&M.
They play 5 teams that ended the year in the top 25 last year.
Yes, that's another one that and, like, I agree with you on him being the most intriguing player, like, he makes some great throws, but there is a lot more wrong with the Florida Gators, and there has been a lot more wrong with the Florida Gators under Billy Napier than the quarterback position. I'm not saying there won't be times that he's not gonna make an insane, like, "Oh my god," like, that he did it against Ole Miss. You're like, "Jesus, like, how did they not tackle him?" Like, right there or whatever, but that 4-game stretch and, like, they had like, granted, that's what people were thinking last year is, "Oh, their schedule kinda starts to eat like, is kinda difficult, and then they have that 4-game stretch at the end of the season that Billy Napier, his future is gonna be decided on. They ended up going 3-1, I think, and actually
Yeah,
played Georgia pretty well too in that. So maybe something just clicked with them, and they are on the road to being a national title contender again. But in the back of my mind, they were still, to me, an 8-5 team who
that's fair.
got killed by Miami. Like, there's still a lot of issues there, and we'll see. I mean, they always have great recruiting classes. That's not the issue with Florida. The issue with Florida has been other things, much like kind of like Alabama last year, where it's a but to a bigger degree because it's been
I agree.
basically since Tim Tebow left. So,
I agree. I mean, the win total set at 7.5. I think that's very, very fair for them.
so do you think then if Billy Napier goes 8-5, he's back?
I think he. I mean, because what? Because Lagaway would still have to come back for one more year, right? Because he can't go to
Yeah,
the draft. I
it would
think
just be
then. I mean, then I think Billy Napier is tied at the hip with Lagway, and then it's like no
Dude,
coach needs a player in the SEC more than Billy Napier needs Lagway to succeed.
that's fair. I'm just curious because he's 19-19 right now.
Hmm.
8-5, so that would put him at what, 27-24 in 4 years at University of Florida.
Shoot.
You you're borderline getting into some murky water. I mean, you're
Wow.
in murky water.
Look, they call it the swamp for a reason, and Billy Napier does not want to be down there. But let's move on to Georgia, the Speed Demons, on and off the field. Man, I was looking at my last year's notes because I used the same kind of note-taking template to save myself some time, so I didn't have to re-enter like how I wanted it to be structured. Man, was I wrong about Carson Beck? I think I had him as like the Player of the Year last year. Holy moly! I mean,
It was
I was so wrong on him, and
and
I
they
w- it's
a lot of it was him, but a lot of it too last year was just and I think I wanna say we talked about it at the beginning of the season, like, we talked about it at some point last season, I know, but Georgia lost so many offensive weapons from
yeah,
the, uh, team who lost to
championship game.
Alabama
Yeah,
to last year that there I mean, there's times last year that their offense just did not and yeah, Beck was a lot of that, but I mean, name a receiver or something from
no,
Georgia last year
they
that you're
don't
like,
have a
"Oh, that."
receiver. They don't have a running back. I mean, I just looked up. They are losing 4 out of their 5 starting offensive linemen from last year. I mean, look, we all know the defense is going to be a Kirby defense. Like that's not that's not the question here. I can sleep at night knowing that the defense is going to be fine at Georgia. That offense, I mean, how is Gunnar Stockton gonna go from like he's gonna have some pressure. It's not just like, oh, like hell of a run you had in the SEC championship, kid. Like, great job. It's like, no, this is University of Georgia. This is
They had a
still,
down they in their minds had a down year last year and won the SEC championship game.
yeah,
Like, and I part of that had to do with that just getting dominated by Ole Miss, but and we talked about that going into that game. We're like, "What?" This defensive line for Ole Miss is one of the nastiest we've ever seen, like, truly a great defensive line, and Georgia's offense it's supposed to rain in this game, and Georgia's offense has not been very good, and Georgia's only touchdown, they started in the red zone, I believe, because Jackson Dart threw
hmm
that interception on the first drive. That was their only touchdown the whole game, and even after that, though, like, just looking, 31 against Tennessee, UMass, they had 59. They had that and I forgot about them. My god, looking back at last year, I completely forgot about that. They should have lost to Georgia Tech, but
yeah, yeah.
Georgia Tech went ACC, like, weirdo mode and
I remember
decided
that
to
on the goal line.
yeah, but they and last year was so weird because if they could have lost that game and then if they beat Texas like they did, they still would have been in a playoff. But overall, what I'm saying is it was a down year for them, and they still won the SEC championship
No,
amongst.
they got some big games early to prove it. I'm still high on Georgia. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I'm still probably gonna have them in my playoff, whether they're in the Natty or not. I can't. I don't see them winning less than 9 games. Realistically, they're probably gonna win 10 or 11. They're
The
gonna have
Kirby
a hiccup.
propaganda will be at an all-time
Oh,
high after.
Kirby, he's a sicko and a pervert who somehow loves this. Like, he loves everyone being down on, and you know what? In a way, I think he's glad to have Gunnar Stockton, a short guy who's not. He needs Stetson Bennett clones, just like Saban needed McElroy clones for a while, and he got the perfect like upgraded Pokemon version of McElroy and McCarron. I think Kirby needs the perfect Stetson Bennett Pokemon upgrade version in
Yep.
Gunnar Stockton. We will. That's the truth. But I'm not too worried about Georgia doing well. I'm high on them. A team I don't think is going to do very well. And I'm sorry, Wildcat Nation. I know you guys got Mark Pope. You guys are all fired up in basketball. I I think UK is in a worse spot than Arkansas is. I
Yeah, this is
this is true limbo. They're in a point with Stoops where it's like they they fired him, he left, he came back. It's like he left for Texas A&M, he thought he got the job, came back. He has a $40 million buyout if they want to fire him right now. And like Arkansas, they're just kind of in this middling ground where other middling SEC teams are seeming to close the gap while they're staying in the middle. Kentucky is.
yeah, I mean, even, like, la even last year, they were really, really bad. Like, truly a very bad team, and they still, like, had they were so weird, though, because it was last year, right? Not the year before that they almost beat Georgia? They
I
did beat
think,
Ole Miss last year. I know that for sure, but I wanna say, like, a week or 2 before they had played Georgia real clo maybe it
yeah,
was a year before, but yeah, they're just I don't know, they just can never get this their defense is always pretty good, like, yeah, they'll have, like, the 1 or 2 games where someone just trounces them, but it's always just their offense, like, their offense is just
their
never
offense, and it's gonna be. I mean, have their quarterback's gonna be a 25-year-old Zach Calzada. I mean, this has disaster written all over it. This literally has disaster written all over it. I
and Butch
all
Hamden
I'm
is
in,
back for them.
but come on. But hey, big year for the return of stuff like Bush, right? A little bit of stuff in the Middle East going on right now. Maybe this is the year of the Bush.
Which I don't think we have it today. And it's a good thing because there are multiple fan bases who are on the East or on the list with, we'll just get into it for a little bit. Quick segment. Uh the person who put under the headline that said Iran 12 of 60 missiles or whatever, hit target and then just put a picture of Carson Beck. I saw you, Tennessee fan. You deleted the post afterwards, but it's out there. It was
Yes,
screenshot.
no, that was. We talk about it all the time on Twitter and SEC Twitter. I think I saw every stadium tagged in a similar post going like, Iran, please do not attack this top secret nuclear facility. And then it's just like Bryant Denny Stadium or something like that. We see
These
you
people need
and you need
football
to
in their
stop.
lives.
I'm feeding for football. That's why we're starting to do this. People who are listening, I know all of you are feeding for football, but please let's keep these comments until we get to the season. We have to stay cordial, and then we can go crazy. But yeah,
Yes.
Kentucky, really not much to talk about them. Not really high hopes for them this year. But hey, maybe they'll prove us wrong. Moving on to a team that LSU fans, the Tigers would say they have the best player in the conference. And I think they have a point, maybe. I also think Garrett Nussmeier, under the most pressure, but also has the most to play for this year out of any player in the conference. And let me tell you why. Garrett Nussmeier has a chance to play himself into being the number one QB prospect over Arch Manning. And people call me crazy, but Garrett Nussmeier's father works for the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints are projected to be the worst team in the country next year in the NFL. Could see it. I know a lot of people are saying, like, hey, Manning, Manning. It'd be hard for someone to pass up on their son. That's all I'm saying. But it's looking to be a solid team this year, Zuch. I just don't know kind of where they fit in the SEC.
To me, and we've talked a little bit about Billy Napier and Sam Pittman, and this one's going a little bit under the radar because they are supposed to be good. To me, there's nobody on a hotter seat than Brian Kelly. Like he has to. He's 29-11 after 3 years, so just under 10 wins a year. However, when you look at last year for LSU, and I think this matters a little bit. Like, yes, a win's a win, but I do think it you have to at least consider it. They had that South Carolina game, which South Carolina just completely imploded. South Carolina probably should have, like, their win probability had to be like 99% in that game. They also didn't lead Ole Miss until they scored in overtime, and they still lost 4 games last year.
Hmm.
So I don't know. Like it hasn't seemed to me like something is not clicking with Brian Kelly and LSU, and I don't know. Like obviously, I think Brian Kelly's a good coach. He did great in Notre Dame. He's done good at LSU. Like 29 wins in 3 years. Like I said, that's almost 10 wins a year. But if they have another four, like LSU is not a 4-loss, 3 or 4 loss a
No, not
season.
at all.
Les Miles won a national championship there and got fired for having 3 or 4 and went to another one. And he was mostly having like 3 or so losses a year. So those other guys like Sam Pittman, Billy Napier could theoretically, I think, save their jobs with 8 wins. If Brian Kelly has 9 wins again, I don't know that he's I really don't know that he's back at LSU. I think they might
No, that's completely fair to say. It's completely fair
take
to
it,
say.
and they I mean, I don't think it's a guarantee like that they do get to 10. They start at Clemson, which
I know they've very top heavy schedule if you take a look at it.
yeah, Clemson, Florida, at Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Oklahoma. They have A&M on here. Throw in South Carolina. I mean, we'll see with them, but you'll really, and I think Clemson is going to be really good this year. I think we'll get into them later when we do the ACC one. But that's another one that's like, it doesn't ruin your season, obviously, losing the first game, especially now in a 12-team playoff. That theoretically has, or realistically, has no effect on if you can make the playoff or not if you're LSU. If you win the SEC, you're in. So the Clemson game doesn't matter, but it does because if they go to Clemson and lose like 28-10, something like that, they lose by double digits. He's feeling it.
No, he
Like
is. He is.
they're not.
I
Same thing with
agree.
Kalen DeBoer. Like I mean, you're just at a program that even losing once isn't acceptable, but like you just can't. It's hard at those places to me to even if it is a tough game to start out with a loss because then you're like that outside noise is like you suck, like the season's over. Obviously, it's not, but you know what I mean.
Hmm. No, I do. And LSU, they return Aaron Anderson. I think he's gonna have a monster year, win wise or not. I think Nussmeier is gonna tear it up. Um, the O line's looking solid, but they got to replace Will Campbell, a big piece of that. And that, like I said, that schedule is so top heavy that they just got to like absorb that brunt to get to the easier part of that schedule. Like you don't want to lose more than 1 or 2 games in that first half of the season, because then you
No, and
you want to be able to kind of coast to see if you can get almost steal a playoff spot at like 11 or 10.
yeah, and that's where that Clemson game does matter for the playoffs. Like I said, yeah, theoretically LSU could go win their next 11 games, be in the SEC championship, and then win or lose in that game, they're in the playoff. Are they going to go 11-0 after if they lose to Clemson? Probably not. And that's where it does start to come in like, oh, we have whatever it is. 11-2 Clemson versus 10-2 LSU. Clemson, like saying like if Clemson were to lose 2 games, or whatever, that's when it does start mattering.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I think it like Brian Kelly has a lot riding on that game, in
We will
my
see.
opinion.
We will see. Yeah, Brian Kelly does have a lot. Um, I mean, this is just, I mean, Mississippi State. I'm kind of going to reiterate the same thing I said last year. I don't want to rag on them too much, but when your coach dies, you go 2-10, your quarterback gets hurt. I mean, dude,
They
what?
were a mess last. They were just
Yeah,
a
I
total
mean, I
mess.
don't, I don't even know what to say, honestly. Like, I think the one thing that you can improve on is, you know, you would just hope that your QB plays the whole year, and you'd expect to be better on offense just from that fact, and don't be the worst defense in the SEC. I
Just
mean,
getting
their win over under is set at 3.5. Would you say 5 wins is a win for them next year or this
oh
upcoming
yeah.
year?
What
Okay.
they're in a worse place, I would say, than Kentucky and Arkansas. Like
Oh,
Kentucky and Arkansas
they're in a
have
terrible
some
place.
stability, little bit of stability, but there's been no stability at Mississippi State, and a lot of that's not their fault. But I don't know how
I don't know
they
where they
start getting up and running again. They are behind the 8 ball, and it's uh,
they are.
in today's day and age, it's very hard to get out of that situation.
Look, all last thing I'm going to say about Mississippi State, they need to thank the SEC commissioner and God every single day that they are grandfathered in. Let's just say that because, like I said, it's just brutal that out of the whole time in the history of college football that they've decided to lay one of the worst stretches of their program history. It is right now. Let's move on to the Mizzou Tigers, and this is another one. I'm looking at my last year's notes. Man, I was stupid for going in all in on Mizzou, and I now realize that Eli Drinkowitz is he a snake oil salesman? I don't know. But damn it, Zooch, I look at this schedule and I might be in again. They avoid Georgia, Texas, LSU, and Tennessee. They don't play any of those teams. Am
There,
I am I back in on Mizzou?
I don't think it's a terrible idea to be back at Mizzou to have a good year. I don't necessarily know that. I mean, Drinkowitz he knows what he's doing. Like he's a dork. I will say he's a dork, but good God, I didn't realize they play like how many home games do they have? Jesus
It's
Christ.
it's ridiculous how easy their schedule is. Like I might be
Their
back in on
they
Mizzou.
don't play an away game until October 18th.
It's seriously the most ridiculous thing ever. Eli Drakowitz, is he just playing everyone as a fool and he's like running laps around everyone? Honestly.
Missouri has become like, and you see it in politics sometimes, like an election will come around. Missouri is like the senator or congressman that just basically almost runs unopposed, and you don't even really know like what any of their thoughts are on anything, but you just like will be watching the ticker and it's like, oh, this guy won 98% of the vote. Like, and he just wasn't running against anybody. So that's what Mizzou is like doing. They're not like famous. They're just kind of there. They'll probably start out like 5-1 or 6-0. Or I don't know, they'll beat Alabama. But yeah, I will say 5-1 or so. They play Alabama on October 11th at 11. Already announced the time for that game. They could be 5-0 and they'll be showing some guy on Mizzou who's probably not that great, and they'll be like, "Oh, like this is who Alabama needs to be worried
Oh,
about,"
it'll
and
be
it'll
Bo
be
Pribula, the transfer from Penn State, studied to be the starter at Mizzou this year. Bo Pribula. Here we go.
and they'll be down 24-3 at halftime. So
Yes, yes, I agree. I think that's about as accurate as a Mizzou talk as we can get. That was man, but Drinkowitz, man, he's the gift that keeps on giving, and he also is the dork that keeps on dorking. Let's move on to Oklahoma, school that we seem to talk a lot about because of our resident Sooners fans, team voicing. Man, all I gotta say about Oklahoma is offense has got to be a lot better than they were last year. I mean, they were in the 100s of total offense, and they picked up what a lot of people are saying is going to be the best transfer in the entire conference in John Mateer. We saw him last year as at Washington State playing Boise State. I think John Mateer is the real deal. My thing is, does he have the help around him? I mean, they got Ott from Cal. It just seems like Oklahoma. I don't know. They were so bad last year that I don't know if I'm convinced that two star players can make them better.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, resident Sooner fan Cody Voisin has already declared that Bryce Underwood is not going to be prepared for how loud Gaylord Memorial is going to be when Michigan comes to Oklahoma next year. When we were looking at their schedule, he's like, "I'm telling you, that freshman, all the money they gave him, all that doesn't matter when you can't hear the signals coming in." I'm like, Cody, Oklahoma scored like 10 points 4 times last year. I don't know that it's going to matter that much. I actually do, though, have Oklahoma as a playoff contender. And I should have set what my parameters are for a playoff contender is 9 wins. If I think you can get to 9 wins,
No,
that means I think you can probably have 10. And I should
they could be
clarify,
5-0 headed into Red River. I looked at their schedule. They could be 5 and
yeah.
0 headed into that game with Texas.
So to me, if you're at 9 wins at any point, but if they're at 9 wins at any point preceding that LSU game, their last game of the season, I just find it very hard to believe that you aren't in the conversation at 10-2 if you're Oklahoma. Now, are you going to be in the top 6? No, probably not. Unless for some reason Oklahoma's losses were like Michigan and another SEC team and they go on to win the SEC championship. But
Mhm.
I mean, if they're 9-2 going to that LSU game, that's what makes this conference so interesting this year is there's a lot of games at the end of the season that seem like they are playoff games without being a playoff
Yeah.
game. So we're gonna see like that Oklahoma. He's another one. Venerables like that's gonna be a big game for both of those coaches. I feel like him and Brian Kelly. Like if you're
No, it will be, and we've seen. It's like you said, it's one of those playoff games before the playoff game scenarios. We've seen with teams in the past too. You know, s- we've all seen the kind of not success stories with these transfer quarterbacks coming in that are older, but there's also success stories where, I mean, shoot, we saw Cam Ward last year. You see Dylan Gabriel. You see some of these other, quarterbacks. They go to a school. Will Howard last year, they go to a school from an already decent school, and they kind of explode. I think that's what Oklahoma needs next year from John Mateer if they want to be a playoff team.
yeah, and I think they can do it, but they're another one that like that early season Michigan game. I think win or lose, you'll see a lot. You'll kind of know what Oklahoma is probably going to be. Like if they come out and they lose by a field goal to Michigan, I think you can look at that and be like, okay, obviously that's one loss. Like you can't have too many, but we're feeling a lot better about this than, for example, last year when they had the Texas game and they just got absolutely. It's like,
Mhm.
all right, we're nowhere even. Forget about the playoff. We are worried about making a bowl game. So
Yeah, no, I agree. We'll see. Their win total set at 7. I think that's a sneaky over for any gambler that wants to take because right now it's only set at 7. Going to move on to Ole Miss. I already talked about player I think's under the most pressure to perform. I think Lane Kiffin, not hot seat pressure, but in terms of you need to win pressure. I think Lane Kiffin is like, dude, you have hit now, I think 2 times since in his Ole Miss stint, like, you have been the first or second best team outside of, like, the national championship bubble, and it's like, we need to see you in the playoff, man. You don't play Bama, you don't play Texas, you don't play Tennessee this year. That's 3 big boys off your schedule. You reloaded in the portal like you had every year. It's like, we need I think Lane Kiffin needs more than any coach in the country a playoff berth.
yeah, and based on all I've read about them and being a fan and all that, I don't know that necessarily this year they're going to expect that. Now he has built that success to where now if they come out and win 7 games, you kind of become a victim of your own success, right? Like
Mhm.
now winning 7 games at Ole Miss, people are going to be kind of pissed off at. People were pissed last year, and they were a very good. Like people hate Charlie Weiss Jr. Like I'm like people are turning on Lane Kiffin. They're like invest in the basketball program. I'm like, all right, we are like 6 years removed from Matt Luke. Chill out with the like acting like it's the end of the world. Like, yes, I was annoyed, but it's kind of like you said. You like look back at last year and you're just like as a fan, you're like, what? It feels a little bit, yes, like a wasted year because like you're like, all right, the Kentucky loss was just flat out brutal. Like that one was just brutal, like to a bad team. You're like, okay, led LSU the entirety of the game. I just literally have nightmares about the dropped wide open touchdown that would have made it 14-0, and then LSU scoring on like the first play in overtime. So you led that game the whole way through. You get yourself back into it where it's like, all right, you just have to get fat. And I told you this was going to happen, and you can verify it. I was like, I guarantee you these bastards beat Georgia and then lose to like Florida
Yep.
the next week. You come out, you destroy Georgia, who's the king of the SEC. Destroy them. The game doesn't even like look close. And then the next week you come out and have that game against Florida to where it's like, you're leading almost the whole time again and just can't like you can't like slit their throat when you needed to, and it comes back to bite you in the ass. So then you're looking and you're like, okay, another 10 win season, which is like you said, fantastic, but the fans want more now. Like, and I think a lot of Lane Kiffin stuff is tongue in cheek. Like, I personally think he's good for the sport, like the stuff he says on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Some people think it's nonsense, and that's fine. But I still think this team this year could also be like you brought up the schedule. Still think they have the talent. I think Austin Simmons is going to be very good. I
Mhm.
honestly think he's probably going to be better than Jackson Dart was. And I think Jackson Dart was good. I think Jackson Dart had some missed. I think Jackson Dart could have left Ole Miss being bigger than the Mannings, but let it slip away too many times. And was that all on him? No, there was no running game last year. That was a whole fiasco in itself. But you're the quarterback, so anytime a team loses, unless you lose like whatever 49-45, you're going to take some blame. And there were games last year where the offense just wasn't. I mean, it was never at any point last year the defense, like not a single time where you like, God, this defense is the reason Ole Miss lost. So we'll see about them. I mean, I look at it and I'm like, Georgia State at Kentucky, Arkansas, Tulane. You probably should be 4-0 going into that LSU game.
Mhm.
Then you get, and that game's at home, which I think is a winnable game. There's not a game on here I look at Ole Miss and I'm like, they can't. And it used to be like, all right, unless they get extremely lucky, they're probably not beating Alabama. LSU's always been a little more back and forth than Ole Miss, Alabama. Georgia, probably going to be tough to win at Georgia. But the rest of it, could I see 10 wins in there? Yeah. Could I also see 8 wins? Yeah. If they come in and have 6 wins, despite the losing all the guys on defense, losing Trey Harris, so on and so forth, Jackson Dart, obviously, you're not at a point anymore as that program and as Lane Kiffin that you can use that as an excuse. I don't think so.
I agree. No.
And I'm going to say it about a lot. There are a lot of teams in the SEC I think that could make the playoffs. Like I'm
Yeah.
not trying to, like there's the ones we don't think can make the playoff. We've kind of already hinted at are Kentucky,
Mississippi State.
Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Vandy. Like no one else would I be like. oh my god, I'm like totally shocked that this team made the playoff. There'd be
I'd
some
be a
more
little shocked
surprising.
about Auburn. I'm not gonna lie. I'd be a
Yeah,
little shocked about
Auburn would
Auburn.
be Auburn and like like South Carolina, but even South Carolina was pretty good
Well,
last
we're
year.
gonna
Like
talk about them
so,
next. It's gonna be we're gonna talk about them next. I mean, South Carolina fans would tell you that they have the most intriguing player in the country. In Lenora Sellers, Beamer Ball is backed. That's what I had in my notes. Just Beamer Ball and all caps. No mayo for Mr. Beamer, but this is the best South Carolina team that they've had since kind of those early 2010s Marcus Lattimore teams, I'd say. From
yeah,
like
and
that
they
era.
were a good. If I was a South Carolina fan, I would look back at that era when they were going like 11-2, like 3 straight years or something like that. As damn, like why couldn't the playoff had existed then? Because we
Yeah.
were in our like heyday.
Who was the quarterback on those teams? I just remember him being like, "Oh my gosh, this guy is like an Evo Shield wearing D bag."
They had Steven Garcia for a little bit,
It
and then
wasn't
they
him. It
had
was someone
Connor
else.
Shaw. Was it
Yep.
him?
Yep. Connor Shaw. Oh my gosh, man, he was a gunslinger. I remember. But yo, South Carolina
Alshon
this
Jeffrey was on this. Like they were
dude,
good.
they're good, and they have lost a lot on defense this year, but I think like Florida, their success is going to be directly correlated with Lenore Sellers. I forgot who the running back that they picked up, Rasul Faison, and I don't know if he's eligible yet. I think the information I've got, I don't know if it was wrong or I read a late article that he's still trying to get his eligibility approved by the NCAA. He's a Mountain West transfer, I think, from Utah State or Colorado State, and I think he could be. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but I think he could just feed off Lenore Sellers, and you're going to see this guy rack up massive, massive rushing stats next year if he's
Yeah, they're
eligible. But South Carolina, I personally have them as a dark horse playoff team. I liked what I see with Sellers. I don't like Sellers with the goggles, though. I think if Sellers doesn't wear the goggles, South Carolina playoff team.
okay.
With the
Here's the
goggles,
thing.
Mayo Bowl.
I will say, if you were gonna wear the goggles and you get into a situation where, let's say, you're down 2 or 3 scores and the game is over, you cannot be caught by the cameras on the bench with the goggles still on. Once you remove your helmet, the goggles have to come off
Yes.
because you're probably going to be making a stupid face and then you'll get memes. So maybe goggles off, like towel over your head, something that, because that cameraman for ESPN, whose sole job is to let me find the 18 to 22-year-old who thinks the entire state hates him right now and zoom in on him, will find you if you have the goggles on.
That's funny, though. I completely agree. South Carolina, I have them as a dark horse. That's pretty much all I have. Like they are defying the ointment this year with me. That's the last thing I'll say about them is that they are the X factor that could just muck everything up because they're South Carolina is not supposed to be good, and they got a chance to be good this year. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and like you said, when we were doing these like deep dives into these teams, there's so many that I'm like, damn, like this team could make the playoff. And I don't know if you feel the same way. When I say playoff contender, I don't mean like national championship.
Oh yeah, no, national championship contender and playoff contender are two different things in my brain. So
Yeah.
glad we're on the same page there. Here's a team that did make the playoff last year, the Tennessee Volunteers. Resident volunteer fan Sean will tell you that they're ready and locked and loaded again this year. This is probably the team that this is me personally. I'm feeling the most out on, and I know Heupel is a great coach, probably one of the best in the country. I know their defense is going to be solid again. Not high on the offense at all. You're replacing Dylan Sampson. The Nico situation this offseason. Like, you're getting Joey Aguilar. Joey Aguilar is going to be your quarterback next year. I'm sorry, Joey Aguilar. You're a great player at App State. I don't know. I just when you're at Tennessee, you want to be the national championship contender. We talk about playoff contender, national championship contender. I think Tennessee's borderline playoff contender. I don't even think national championships in their question this year. And I'm sorry if that's too harsh.
No, they're the one out of all of these middling, and that's not even the right word. They're the bottom end of the tier of teams we talked about that were like, I feel like could make the playoff. Like theoretically, yeah, I could see Tennessee making the playoff, but for the reasons you stated, I think I would be more shocked if Tennessee went 10-2 than I would if they went 8-4. Like
I
to me,
mean,
they seem like a
you're
eight and
spot
like
on. You're spot on with their win total, man. The odds makers got them at 8.5. Like it's I don't think they're as talented as they were last year. They had I think they had a better defense last year. I think they have to replace a lot of offensive linemen. I it's not to say that Tennessee's bad, but almost in like the Joe Milton year, I could see them just getting squeezed. Just getting squeezed out because there's too much talent with other teams this year, in my opinion. Like there's just
yeah,
too
no,
much talent.
that's how I see it too. Not like you said, Heupel, great coach, has really been the first person in 2 decades to actually turn that program into a he has put them in the direction that they think they should be in. Has he reached their full what they think is their full potential? No. And I still believe that Tennessee could win a national championship again. I'm not one of those people who looks at him and goes, "Oh, yeah," like some people do with USC. And to be fair, they did it with Georgia and Michigan and teams like that, like who hadn't won a national championship in a long time, had been downright bad to pretty good. They still invest a lot of money into that football program, get decent recruits, so on and so forth. So yeah, I think Heupel can get them to a national championship. I don't think it'll be this year though, which is
That's
fine.
fair. That's fair. We're going to move on to the other UT, a team that I and a lot of people in the country have as the preseason number one for the SEC. That is the Texas Longhorns. And, let's just keep it simple. They got one of the best coaches in the country in Sark. He's off the liquor. It's great. They have probably the most famous college football player in America right now in Arch Manning. And I think the hype is real. I'm bought into Arch Manning. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's going to be a first round pick next year. And Zuch, I got a fun fact for you, man. Uh, did you know Sark has now gone full Saban?
What?
He's
How's
gone
that?
full Saban in the fact that he is now hiring loser coaches and is going to turn them around into better versions of themselves so they can go off and do great things. Can I just tell you that who has been brought on to the Texas staff this year?
Is it going to be hilarious?
It is, especially for you. It's your arch nemesis, Neil Brown. Neil Brown is on the Texas coaching staff this year. So I think honestly, I mean, all jokes aside, kind of shows you just like where Sark has gone. Like, we've kind of talked since doing this podcast. We've kind of gone from, oh, Sark's solid, but can he like realize his potential to, oh, Sark's a great coach. Like we're at this point where it's like, yeah, Sark's a great coach. He's established. He needs to now jump into that immortality range. You know, where honestly the only two people that are in that range right now are that are currently coaching is probably Kirby and Dabo. And I think if Texas wins a natty this year, Sark can put himself in that category.
Yeah, he'll be on the. I think if Sark wins this year, contingent on how he wins, right? So, like, for example, I don't necessarily put Ryan Day in like an echelon of Dabo, right?
Oh,
Or
me
Kirby
neither.
Smart. And it's, yes, he won the national championship, but a little bit of why I do that to him is how they won that national championship last year. Like, I still think they hands down had the best team, probably, but he still almost did everything in his power to not make the play. Like, seriously,
Yeah.
like, thank God there was a 12 team. I mean, I don't know that he would be the head coach of that team right now if
Yeah.
there was not a 12 team
No, He probably wouldn't.
playoff. Like, and I'm being dead serious when I say that. Like, his lasting memory at Ohio State would be just him sitting there stupidly after that
Yeah.
brawl. Like, what happened?
What happened? Yes.
Which the only thumbs down I'll give Texas, and it's not even their fault, is boo to that Texas Ohio State game being at 11 a.m. on. I want that to be that needs to be nightcapped. I understand big noon kickoff and all that's going to be there.
No way. I'm fired up as a West Coast guy who like, and this is where we differ. A lot of people hate the big noon kickoff, dude. I freaking love big noon kickoff. Look, I'm on the West Coast. I never will ever have my team because I live in the Pacific time. My favorite teams are Pacific time and Mountain time. I will never have a game start before 12:30 or 1 in my life that I'll
That's fair.
ever have to go to in person. There's nothing quite like having a cup of coffee while watching a big game. That's where I differ from a lot of people. I'm sorry. I do like the big noon kickoff.
That's I mean, I don't hate it. I just wish for that first Saturday it was I and I know I differ from people on this. I personally do not hate big games when they start at 8 p.m. I kind of like, and I don't mind when they start early either.
It's like
I don't really love when they start at like 5. I'm kind of like,
no, see, like it's such an interesting difference. You think that's, you being from Florida, me being from California. Do you think that's just kind of how our brains were wired? Like you view 8 o'clock as the big game start. I view kind of like 4:35 as like that's when a big
yeah,
football game's supposed to start. And because like I view 8 p.m. games as like this is the fun sicko game. This is when I get to watch Arizona State play Cal. That's the 8 p.m. game that, like, I have in my mind.
no, I mean, I get all sides of the debate on who has the best start times. I just really like, you know, it's 8 p.m. You've probably already eaten dinner, maybe we're eating a little bit later. Get a 6 pack of some ultras and just like drink until 10:30, 11. Do some last minute Twitters, and it's a little bit different here. Now, I will say, like when I turned 21 and stuff like that, I don't know that I would like because they start earlier here. So in Florida, it was like set. We were in Central Time in my part of Florida, so the big game would be at 7. Here, it's 5 or whatever, and I don't hate that either because like if it's 5 or 6, you can watch the entirety of the game and still go out to the bars or whatever with your friends and maybe catch the late night action of like the
Oh,
Pac
that's the
or
best.
former Pac-12
Catching
or
catching the late night action at a bar where, like, no one's paying attention except for, like, 11 guys and, like, something will happen, you'll just be like, "Did you just see that?" And then, like, you
and
just freak
especially
out and you just freak out the friend group, like, next to you and just, like, you'll see chicks scattered like they just, like, smelled a fart or something because 'cause you're just like, "What do you mean you're not
es
locked into this Wazoo Utah State game?"
especially for us as Boise State fans, because sometimes we'll get
Oh
that
my goodness. Oh my
5
goodness.
o'clock game right. You'll go out with your buddies or whatever, and then you'll kind of forget about, like, what like, you might be checking Twitter, like, the ESPN app, whatever, and then you'll happen to, like, go to the next bar or be at a bar and, like, look up at the TVs, and you're like, "Wait a minute. New Mexico's beating Fresno State 21 to nothing. What's going on here?" And maybe, like, 5,000 people are even watching
Yeah.
that game. You're like, it has no effect
I
on the
have
reality of college
I
football,
one
but
time oh my gosh, you're so right. No effect on the reality. Before we move on to Texas A&M, man, I got funny story. Last year was in San Diego, awesome bar in Ocean Beach, Sunset Bar, crowded bar. Is this a Saturday? And I got to go up to them. Now this is like not like it's a bar with TVs, but it's not a sports bar. For the Boise folks, picture like Silly Birch at like 9. Like it's popping. It's popping. And I had to go over to them and ask, be like, "Hey, do you mind tossing on the Boise State Hawaii game at like 9 p.m.?" I'm the only, and the one TV they gave me was in the middle of the pool room. So I'm just like in the middle of 4 pool tables watching by myself standing up, just being a wall pissing off everyone playing pool. I was screamed. I was like,
Well,
"Come on!" When Ashton Genty scored, and like I had like people like, "Dude, are you okay?" Like we just wanted to check in. We're like, "I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine." So
well, and this is more Boise State fan lore. Like there have been quite a few times that I'm like, okay, we got a game tonight, and it's like a later game, right? Like maybe that 8 because we're Mountain Time
yep,
here. It's like 8, and I'll watch it, head home, be a little bit boozed up, flip on the BNN post game show, and just be
yep.
dying at like some of the comments that people put on there. Like,
Dude, the BNN
this is the
post game
worst.
show.
We have the worst quarterback in the nation, and BJ will click on it and be like, "Oh, Dan, I don't know about that. He threw for 310 yards tonight."
Oh man,
And it
no,
it is even funnier when you're liquored up and
yeah.
just seeing like
The
the
BNN post game
comments
show.
on there.
Shout out BJ Rains. I do think that's one of the most underrated things he does is the post game shows with the live chat. That let's just say, I mean, it was awesome. It is the only consolation if when BSU loses is to go and you just view that chat and you just it is meltdown city. It is
It
Chernobyl
makes
nuclear reaction meltdowns.
it has gotten me to where I will like find certain fan bases that have like a same sort of thing and go and listen to like podcasts that people like have like they'll read their comments live or whatever that they've sent in just to see like get a gauge on what fans of Alabama or Florida or a like some of them are truly like hilarious. It's like the pictures of the people, like all of it is just like
It's
kills
funny.
me.
Yeah, well, that was enough Boise State talk. Texas is going to be good. If you took nothing out of that, Texas is going to be good. Move on to the other Texas SEC team real quick. A&M, I don't their win total set at 8. I think that's due more to like scheduling than anything. I kind of put them in the same boat as Tennessee. Like they're going to be good. It wouldn't surprise me if they made the playoff. I don't think that there's enough there, and I think this conference is too saturated. Again, I mean, they do have they did have the highest scoring offense in the SEC last year. I think it's too saturated unless there's some crazy jump by Reed. I see them as 8, 9 wins and missing the playoffs. Solid year, but not to what they think they should be.
Yeah, I just don't look at them and see like if you look at like the teams who we've talked about like could contend, make the playoff. You know, Nussmeyer is a difference maker for LSU. Sellers, difference maker for South Carolina. Lagway, difference maker for Florida. Ryan Williams, difference maker for Alabama. I think you can even look at Ole Miss and be like, Austin Simmons could be a difference maker for Ole Miss. Uh, Mateer could be a difference maker for Oklahoma. Like you said, I just don't know where they have that at A&M. Like it,
It,
and they're probably the one I did the had I didn't have enough time to quite go into them as much as I would like to. And they were, I mean, I think they surprised people last year with they if they beat Texas, they would have been in the SEC championship, right? Or did they lose the week before?
I don't know, but they were always kind of in that fighting ground. You know, they played Notre Dame tough. So I mean, like, but like I said, like
Okay.
I
They had
don't think
lost to
they're
Auburn the week before in 4 OTs, but
yeah.
I mean, yeah, they only had the South Carolina loss heading into that Auburn game. So it's kind of looking like A&M versus, because we talked about that. A&M versus Texas was probably going to be winner goes to the SEC championship. So maybe Elko just by he seems like a great coach. I mean, he had Duke doing great, so maybe A&M has found their guy.
We'll
I
see.
guess we'll
I think they have. I think they're just a little bit further away than they
yeah.
want to admit. So, look, hey, nothing wrong with A&M. You know, I just think they're a couple years away. Keep doing your thing, Aggie Nation. Keep grinding. You are a cult, though. Moving on. I just had to get that last jab in there. I'm sorry. I just had to get that last jab. But moving on to our last SEC team, a team that last year I think we spent 30 seconds on, but they have forced us and the nation to pay attention. That is the Vanderbilt Commodores with a guy who has a fantastic name, Diego Pavia. Uh, Returned, essentially ruined college football so he could get more NIL money, claiming that his junior college didn't count. So thank you there. But, Vandy, they got a little bit of life in this program for the first time in my lifetime. Um, what I'm worried about is, Pavia, he got this extra year of eligibility. It seems to me that he's milking everything because he knows this is his last year of making real money playing football. So I'm afraid that his mouth is writing checks his body can't cash. With the Big Ten comments, with the Alabama comments, I'm sure there'll be more comments, just the comments he's making in general, this kind of like media tour he's doing. I fear Vandy is going to get the best out of everyone when I think Vandy's better off served kind of being like the sneaky dog that can punch quick and strike first and catch people off guard.
Yeah, if you're on Vandy, we're getting close to the and I honest to God don't remember the guy's name, but a few years ago,
Oh, the
I
Samoan
don't
guy from
even
Sacramento. When you come to our house, I'm gonna show you what SEC ball is about.
yep, and then Tua was throwing like touchdown passes of 45 yards in the fourth quarter. So they need to not do that. Learn from past mistakes, bring him in and be like, he needs to be like, fellas, I tried this once and we lost 59-0 to Alabama after
They
I
have to
did
bring
that.
him in
And
as a special speaker. That
yeah,
one Samoan
just,
guy.
roll the punches, Andy. Be happy with your 6 or 7 wins. Every once in a while, you bump up to maybe 8 or 9. You're a baseball school. It's okay. It is
That is
okay. You're some lawyers. A bunch of lawyers go to your school. You live in Nashville. Like God gave you a bunch of stuff. He did not give you a good football program, unfortunately.
unfortunately not. But Vandy, like I said, I don't think they're gonna be great, but I just they have a weak schedule. The last thing I'll say is they have a weak schedule. I wanted them to be my biggest disappointment, which we'll finish off the show with. But I just think that schedule's too weak for them not to get, like you said, 6, 7 wins. So we'll see. Diego Pavia, great name. I just slow the mouth down a little bit. I mean, a little bit of shit talking's good, but like, don't I would not be calling out the conference that has won the last 2 national championships and calling out the best school in your conference for the last 2 decades. I would call out maybe take some shots at Mizzou or the ACC. That's always an easy one. Take some shots at
Yeah,
the ACC. Take some shots at Memphis maybe. And if you had to take a shot, maybe a little in-state Tennessee, if you want to get your mouth off, but like other than that, let's just cool it. Man, we just ran through every team. That was awesome. I love doing these things, man. I love
I do
doing
too.
the team. This honestly, I think is my favorite. These are my favorite shows of the year. Doing these breakdowns because it allows. I hope it does for you guys listening. Like it makes me more informed, kind of doing the research and
Oh
talking
yeah,
about it. So hopefully, people who are listening, if you need to do some like, oh, I don't know what's happening with Kentucky this year. You give those couple minutes to listen. It's like, bang, I kind of got like bar talk now that when I go watch the game with my buddy and Kentucky's losing a game 7-3, you can go like, oh, well, they got Zach Calzada back. Makes sense. So,
right.
all right. We're gonna move on to some predictions. First thing we'll be predicting is our not national champion, our conference champion and our conference championship. I will go first. I think the conference championship, Zooch, number one overall seed is going to be Texas. I think Texas is going to play. I think Ole Miss sneaks in this year. I think Ole Miss, and if it's not Ole Miss, I was going back and forth between Ole Miss, Bama, and Georgia. For some reason, I think Bama has a few more blunders with Kalen, and I think Georgia somehow gets screwed like tiebreaker wise. That's how I see that scenario playing
That's
out.
and that's an interesting thing about how it works now with so many teams is and tiebreakers are always freaking weird. And we had this debate last year, so we're not going to get into it again. I don't even necessarily know that you need a championship game anymore when there's 20 freaking teams in your league. However, I do agree with you with Texas. And I considered, and I think for the same reasons you did with Ole Miss, like, oh, like you're looking at the schedule, they avoid a lot of teams. You're probably like last year going to have a team that has a couple losses in the championship game. And I theoretically think there could be a bunch of teams with 2 losses and Ole Miss ends up sneaking in. But I have Texas and I have Alabama in the
That's
championship
fair.
game.
No, that's fair.
And
I have
it's
Alabama.
kind of just going with the gut of like who I think will possibly be ahead in the tiebreakers. And I had basically the same 4 teams: Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss. You know, I talked about LSU's issues. I talked about those seem to me like the 4 teams: Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, who yes have their issues, but have the least amount of issues. I
Exactly. I
guess
don't
like
think
the
Texas has many issues. I
no,
think
they're
I think this is the first time in a while where like Texas, it's a very small step, but they seem to be on a level by themselves to start the year, in my opinion. Whether it's
yeah,
just by
and
an inch, though, it's
yeah, and
still they're
they're
a level up.
it's a big year for Sark.
And
Like,
that's why I got Texas. I got them winning the conference. I do. Sorry.
yep,
I know it's a
Texas.
cop out
I have
answer, but I
Texas
have
too. I it's they're gonna be really good. They just
they are.
like they've been building, and it's not okay. Like before with Texas, like the we're back. They were like 10-4 that year, so it's like were they good? Yeah, but they were kind of the fluky 10-win
Yeah.
team, which you get every once in a while. They were. It was. I mean, I don't know. Like you even look at that Ohio State game, and Ohio State has that weird like 80-yard touchdown at the end of
Yeah.
halftime, and and then Texas got down to the goal line and didn't score in
Yeah.
that game. So like
Exactly.
they
No,
were, and the same with I mean honestly like, and I know Georgia had their 3 losses last year, but they both those teams were really good and not like a fake good. Like I think sometimes there's teams who are fake good, and I don't think
mhm,
either of those teams, specifically Texas last year, I think they were truly very
they were
good.
good.
And Georgia, even with the 3 losses, beat a very good Texas team twice. So
That's true. That is very, very true. All right, gonna move on to the player of the year. I think I went back and forth between the 2 quarterbacks, Arch and Nussmeier. I think Nussmeier is gonna put up such stupid video game numbers that it's gonna be hard for him not to be player of the year in the SEC. The reason
yeah,
why I don't have LSU kind of in they were like the 5th team in my discussion. I just think LSU is gonna lose some stupid games. Like I think LSU is gonna lose a stupid one right off the bat against Clemson where Nussmeier plays well and they blow it. And I think they blow 2 more games of of the playoffs again with their piece between their hands like idiots, honestly. Like, but I think Nussmeier's gonna ball out this year. I'm high on him. I think, those weapons he got. So I got Nussmeier as my player of the year.
I had Nussmeier as well, and I almost went with Lenora Sellers, who I think will be good too. I just don't know that he is going to get the coverage, and he's at a program that is not even in the same league in terms of exposure. So,
Yeah, it's a little bit like Ashton Genty, where he's gonna have to start to do historical stuff. Plus his
yeah,
team's going to have to be constantly competing for a playoff.
right.
Which, like, that's very hard to do. Um, Newcomer of the year. I alluded to this already. I have Rasul Faison. If he's eligible, I think he's going to be the best new player. I mean, John Mateer, of course, is like going to be the obvious pick. He's my second, probably, if I had to
That's who
choose.
I picked. So.
I just, I just don't think Oklahoma is going to be good enough. I think South Carolina is going to be a better team this year than Oklahoma, And I think Rasul Faisal is going to be the key rushing element. I wouldn't be surprised if he has over 1,200 yards rushing, double-digit touchdowns, couple of receiving touchdowns. Like
He
he's
will
going to
have a
be
great year if the chain gain isn't eating hot dogs. That's
Shane Beamer, all-time guy you don't want to get caught eating a hot dog next to. Let's just say that because he also hates mayo. I mean, I know mayo's not the biggest condiment on dogs, but like still a condiment. Come on, Beamer. Why were you yelling at the chain gang guys about hot dogs? Come
coaches crash outs about stuff like I was driving home from work today and just was just thinking about the SEC and stuff and just remembered Sark just getting furious at like the TV guy who was like, okay, hold
Don't
on,
run
you
out
guys
yet.
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he like pops out his chest on him.
That was
Just getting
funny, man.
furious at that guy who's like clearly got told from someone. And the guy's like, oh, fuck, I don't want to have to tell this
Yeah.
guy like what to do. But if I don't do that, then I like could get fired or something. And
Mhm.
Sark just took it out on, you
The
know,
poor PA, yeah.
the poor
But
PA.
my last thing is the disappointment of the year. And I went back and forth. I thought about maybe Kentucky, like, but they're already supposed to be bad, but I had them as like being the worst in the conference. I think Tennessee is going to be the biggest disappointment this year. And it's going to stink, but I think they're going to have a year kind of like Joe Milton. I think they're going to be under their win total. And I think a school like South Carolina and either um, Florida or Oklahoma is going to finish above them in the rankings, as well as every other team that we've mentioned previously in our championship talk. So they're going to go from playoff team to middling of the pack SEC school this year.
So my biggest disappointment, speaking of coaches just getting furious, is the fighting Brian Kelly. It's same thing over and over
Yep.
again.
Yeah. All time clip.
With what was it, a Coke bottle or like Mountain Dew that is like
Yeah.
flipped
We're
over?
sitting here again. We're sitting here again. If they lose to Clemson, he literally will be sitting there again.
Yeah, exactly. And it is. I love cheering against Brian Kelly. It's just so funny to like see him get so heated on the side. And there's a lot that plays into it, like the Notre Dame stuff, the switching of the accents, the dancing video with the recruit,
Yeah.
just all of it with
The face that he made in the first game where he's just staring blankly through the camera.
yeah. So yeah, they're my disappointment because of what you said, Nussmeier, and we can do the whole, the quarterbacks aren't gonna get taken high this year. Like it's not a good quarterback class. Freaking 4 quarterbacks go in the first round of the NFL draft every year. Stop doing the quarterbacks aren't gonna get taken thing. They always do. So I mean, he's gonna be. You said he could jump up to number one. I 100% can see that. He's going to be a top 5 pick almost assuredly, unless something drastic happens. People are high on LSU, so if they go 9-3, that's a disappointment. They're thinking of themselves as a playoff and national title contender. So
That's interesting. No, I agree. Brian Kelly, he's on the hot seat if he doesn't perform, make the playoff this year. But that was an awesome show. Covered the SEC, man. What a fun conference to cover. I truly enjoy doing these every year. But yeah, we hope everyone who listened enjoyed that too. If you need to get some facts, scroll and listen to each one of these teams if you're at a bar and you need some quick facts before. But yeah, like previously said, we're going to be doing these reviews every other week, hitting all of the major conferences, as well as a fish show about Notre Dame's and the top, I guess, group of five. Can we even call them group of five? Like the Pac-12 is like power group five. It's weird now, but we'll do the main 4 conferences plus a fish show to cover up what we think are like the best team, the best of the rest, I guess. Would you say, Zuch? Is that the best way to put it? A
I
best
would
of the
say,
rest
yeah.
show. So that's for the Notre Dame fans, the Boise fans, App State, Memphis. I don't know. Tulane, all those schools will that'll be included in our best of the rest show, and that'll take us all the way up until the start of the year. Like it really is upon us. Like I literally think that best of the rest show will be the week of either week 1 or week 0, and then we're right into the thick of things. So we're excited. I'm excited. Zooch, anything else you have for us?
Nothing else. We next, what is today? Wednesday. So we're about a week. Yeah, we're about a week from the 4th of July, and then a month from the 4th of July, a little bit around that area, maybe a couple of days before fall camp starts. So
Hmm.
we'll start getting, seeing the people on Twitter who are like, oh, so and so went 5 for 11 in a scrimmage. The
Oh,
team is fucked. So
5 or 11 in scrimmage. We'll we'll have people complaining on zips of the ball. We'll get people discussing why. Well, he let the media in the practice way more last year, but
it'll
yeah,
happen.
we'll see. But and to everyone who's like kind of confused on what we're talking about right now, I just implore you. This is the best way. This is the last thing I'll leave you guys with. The best way to enjoy fall camp is find like the best 4 to 5 local beat reporters who go to the practices, and you have to find the ones who post videos of the practice as well as periodically doing practice recaps. Then just go right to those Twitter replies or message board replies. That is the best way to consume fall camp because
Yep,
that is
100%.
just you just want everything out there. Just every good take, bad take. We're winning the natty. We're not making a bowl. Everything's going to happen in those comment sections. But again, we all thank you for listening. It truly does mean a lot. Zooch, anything else you got?
Last thing I'll say is never forget that a lot of fall camp is conditioning based. It is a lot for younger guys to figure out where they fit in on the team, so on and so forth. No matter what these coaches say, they have an idea of who the quarterback is probably going to be before, even if they say it's a competition. I would say 90% of the time they know who the quarterback is going to be. They are just, stroking the fire for their team. So don't read
Stroking the
too much into.
stroking the fire and also keeping an 18-year-old from transferring right away is what I
Yeah.
would say. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Peace.